And it's exciting to be here right now. I know we're a little early. I wish we had like coffee and cookies for everybody, but that's how it is. And I suppose it's closer to dinner time, so maybe we should have like cheese and tea or I don't know, something.
Some wine, some champagne for your birthday, maybe.
Yeah, that's afterwards, I think. A little Prosecco for the next part. So I'm just trying to get comfortable in my seat. And yeah, it's been a busy day today. Very busy.
I bet. You started at what, 4:30 this morning? Is that what
Yeah. Yep. My alarm went off at 4 a.m, which I was kind of up anyway, and it was light, and there was a bear on the beach, and so there was stuff happening. It wasn't too hard to wake up that early, but yeah, it's very exciting. It's been a fun birthday.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
And this is a nice way to continue it. So.
Mm-hmm. It was nice to see Chip today for half a second.
Right. Have you met him yet? Have you seen the Invisible Man?
Yeah, he's introduced himself to me.
For those of you who are listening, welcome. And I'm Heather, and this is Amy, and we're chatting about my husband. We've been going back and forth delivering books to the bookstore, because in the COVID time, we're dropping off books here and I sign them, and then they go to Amy's store on Main Street. So it's been a little different to sign books with me and the dogs. We try to make a celebration out of it, but.
Hi, Heather. It's Ellen. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Hi, Ellen. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, are you kidding? I wouldn't miss it.
Lovely evening. I promise I won't keep everybody too long so you can go back outside. That is kind of one of the cool things with Zoom. Normally like book events in the summer in Alaska, especially if it's nice out, no one's going to go inside or go someplace to be indoors. So it's kind of neat that we can do it and then still go back outside again. So I appreciate people taking the time to come. It's nice.
There's 26 people logged in right now.
Oh my goodness, that's a bigger crowd than I usually get. I've done these for 2 old people. Or I pull up a chair and sit down and chat with them. So it's nice. It's very nice to have you here.
Hello, Heather. Happy birthday.
Hey, thank you, Anna. That's nice. It's
nice
yeah, I'll tell you, can you see my flowers? I don't know if you can see this. Yes, these came from Becky Nash. She brought me flowers and a little heart and a little poem. And so I've tried to make everything look pretty.
It looks very nice.
For the TV. I feel like this is like TV, and I'm practicing like those people, on the newscast.
We're kind of practicing too.
Yeah.
This is my grandson, Jesse.
Hi, Jesse. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Okay.
Hi, Heather. This is a blast from your past, from your Friends Academy days.
I hear the voice. Who is it?
Well, despite what my sign says, rather than my son Michael, this is Andrea Crouppen. Me is Andrea Gardner.
Wow.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Where do you live now? Where are you? That's not where you are, right?
No, I'm on Long Island, but I'm in Garden City now, so not far. And at some point, I will also email you. I have a picture from my bat mitzvah from 1972 with you.
I went to, for those of you who don't know, and I actually write a little bit about it in the book, but I went to a Quaker school. I grew up on Long Island, and Andrea was in my class, and we went to a Quaker school called Friends Academy. We were the Fighting Quakers. Anyway.
Bit of an oxymoron.
I know. And then we, one of the flip side interesting or good things about this pandemic is, reconnecting with people. And we were supposed to have a reunion this summer, and I was going to go back to New York and do it all. And then, of course, this all happened. But myself and our former classmates have all been kind of emailing and being in touch. And it's just been really cool, especially as different people in different places. There's a lot of New Yorkers that have had a terrible time. And And then, of course, all the Black Lives Matter and everything going on, we're all affected and talking about it. And it's from all different parts of the country and different perspectives. And that's been a great thing to be part of that again. So it's weird how things that happen to you in high school, like it seems just like a blink, just like yesterday.
Yes. Yes, it does. Heather, I did receive my copy of your book yesterday. I let Amy know that, and I really, really can't wait to read it.
Oh, thank you. I hope you enjoy it.
I'm sure I will.
And is it on Kindle also, or just,
Yeah, no, you can find it anywhere where books are sold. So
yay?
Upstairs.
more people are coming. I'm hearing clunking and clunk, clunk, clunk. Chip is in the kitchen. He's downstairs. He's getting ready for my birthday. My kids are coming over for a socially distant picnic. Or not. We won't be distant socially, but we'll be spread apart. That makes sense. Yeah, for those of you that are new on here that don't know this, I have 5 children, and two of my daughters live in Haines with 5 grandchildren, and so they're right here. And then 2 more of my daughters live in Juneau, and there's 3 more grandchildren there. And then my son has just left. He's in Australia.
What part of Australia?
He lives in a town called Margaret River in Western Australia, WA. It's at the far southwest corner of Australia. We got to go this winter and meet our grandchild there, who was born in January, just before all the COVID. We managed to get all the way to Australia and back before everybody was, quarantined and sheltered at home. So that was pretty. I'm very happy that we got to make that trip, because Lord knows when we'll get to travel like that again. Hopefully this time next year, maybe.
Maybe.
My husband has cousins in Melbourne, and we hope to get there at some point.
It's a great country. I loved it. And it reminded me, for those who are from Alaska and Yukon, it was kind of like Canada a little bit. It reminded me of being in the Yukon and in British Columbia, the way the people were, and the community centers, and the whole way of being. But it was tropical, and everything was so different, and the trees smelled so good. It smelled like shampoo, because you have all that Australian shampoo. And I kept thinking, why does everything smell like shampoo? And then I realized it was the trees and the plants. So. Everybody's so quiet.
Hi, Heather.
Oh, hi. Hey, Emily. Thank you
Hi.
for coming.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm just great.
I'm super excited about your book. I just ordered my copy today.
Oh, good. Well, thanks. I'm super excited about all of your publications. Emily is a terrific poet. For those of you that don't know her, who lives in Juneau, and you should Google her name and find her poems. And I love Freshly Rooted. Is that the collection? That's the one about getting, coming to Alaska and being in Juneau. And it's, I love that term, freshly rooted. Because I
actually borrowed that from Nels with his permission.
Oh.
He coined that.
I like it. I like that. I like that term a lot. I think about that.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. Thank you.
Heather, you mentioned Australia. I'm from Australia.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I live on the East Coast.
On the East Coast?
About 2 hours north of Sydney.
We didn't get to Sydney. We flew into Melbourne and then flew to Perth and then drove down to Margaret River.
Yeah, it's a long way from Melbourne to Perth.
It's a big country. It's like it's a long way from New York to Alaska.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful.
You have several people wishing you happy birthday in the chat, just so you know.
I can't, just so you all know too, when I can't look at the chat and look at everybody too. I just can't chew gum and walk at the same time either. So that'll be Amy, or we have one of my neighbors actually, Dylan Chapel, who just graduated from Haines High School, running a lot of this too. So that's pretty neat.
Sherry says, sorry, no cupcakes.
Oh, well, how are we going to do that, Sherry? We can't, she'll have to make me, Sherry has been sewing all the masks. So we can get birthday masks, or we'll all need another one. It looks like we're going to have to keep wearing them for a while. We just had a pretty high day today for the COVID in Alaska, 48 new cases, which seemed high to us. It probably doesn't to those of you in more populous states, but that's, I think, our highest day. So, something to think about.
Happy birthday, Heather from Tanaki.
Oh, hey, Linda.
I have to tell you, Burl.
Hi. Welcome to the Startup in Haines. I'm Heather Lende. Let's check out the bookstore. Hi, Amy. Wear your mask when you come in.
Hi, Heather. Welcome.
Oh, thanks. I'm really excited about tonight.
I am too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. I've got all your books ready to go.
Great. I've signed a bunch. I've got another couple boxes up at the house, and I'll bring them as you need them. So
fantastic.
My glasses are fogging up, and you can't see my smile because I have my mask. But if that's how we need to keep the store open, I'm all for it. I appreciate it.
There's the store. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Heather Lende book release and birthday party. My name is Amy Kane, and I'm the owner of the bookstore in Haines. Thank you all so much for attending tonight. I'm so excited to be here today with Heather to celebrate her latest book of Bears and Ballots, released today by Algonquin Books, and to celebrate the wonderfully coincidental occasion of Heather's birthday. This meeting will last about an hour, and you're welcome to ask questions in the chat. If you still need to order your copy of this book, you should know that if you order through the Haines Bookstore at hainesbookstore.com, your book will be autographed by Heather, and there's an option for you to have her personalize it for you too. Also, you'll be supporting the small town of Haines and its local bookstore, so thank you for that. I'm sure most of you know Heather Lende from her previous 3 novels, as well as her being the obituary writer for the local paper, the Chilkat Valley News. She has also contributed to NPR, New York Times, National Geographic Explorer, Women's Day, and Alaska Dispatch News. So please welcome with congratulations and happy birthday, Heather Lende.
Thank you, Amy. That's really nice. And thank you all for being here. It's kind of weird to be doing this in this time. There's a lot going on and in the world, and yet I think there's things in people's stories, and especially in stories interacting with our local governments and the value of community and place and doing the best we can where we are that matter. I also wanted to, try to do my part a little bit and address the systemic racism and injustice in Haines. And one small way that I can do that is to let you all know that we are speaking to you from Jilkoot Kwan, and it is both proper and right to acknowledge the original caretakers of this land, the Tlingit people, and to say thank you and Gumchish. And now I want to tell you a little about my book. It's about my 3-year term on the Haines Borough Assembly from October 2016 until 2019. And the ups and downs and ins and outs and the funny parts and the heartbreaking parts and the inspiring parts. And I think it's the kind of book that I wished I had read before I ran for office. it might have helped a little. And I begin the book with the quote from, I don't know if you're familiar with The Nun on the Bus. She calls herself Sister Simone Campbell. If not, you could look her up and read some of her wonderfully wise observations. And she says, the mandate to exercise our civil obligations means that we can't be bystanders who scoff at the process of politics while taking no responsibility. We all need to be involved. It's an unpatriotic lie that we as a nation are based in individualism. The Constitution underscores the fact that we are rooted and raised in a communal society and that we each have a responsibility to build up the whole. The preamble to the Constitution could not be any clearer. We, the people, are called to form a more perfect union. And I also want to acknowledge some of the people that made the book possible. My friend Beth McCready, I walk with Beth every day, and the book is dedicated to her. And if she hadn't listened to my Perils of Pauline on the Borough Assembly and found it interesting and compelling and helped me work through it, there really wouldn't be a book. So it's really nice to have a friend that I could tell these stories to. And in telling them, I sort of figured out maybe what was going on. And she certainly helped me be better on the Assembly and also to be a better person, and gave me the confidence to tell the story to all of you. And then, of course, my neighbor, James Alborough, is also helping with this, but he keeps my computer running and my phone working and my blog running, and even helped me with my Borough iPad. And I really couldn't do anything if James didn't help me along the way. And he just refers to me as his neighbor, the Luddite. But there you have it. So all the technology is thanks to James, and there's a lot of it, and now even more than ever. And of course my family, and especially my long-suffering husband, who was really very kind during all this. And Tresham Gregg, who, this book has a map in it. People have asked for a map in all of my books, and Tresham rose to the occasion and drew a map for me. And I just told him to draw it any way you want, but put the stuff in it that's in the book. And of course he put his own unique, somewhat satirical stamp on it, and I love it. And I'm really happy that the folks at Algonquin liked it and included it in the book too. And of course, I also have to thank a longtime editor, Amy Gash, who called me up 15 years ago and asked me if I wanted to write a book. And I said yes, and that was my lucky day. And this is the 4th book that we've written together, and it really feels like a collaboration. Amy asks a lot of questions, and she helps me be better than I would normally be. So tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a couple little passages, and you're going to have to, Amy or Dylan, my friend Dylan, who's off in the behind the curtain as the wizard of Zoom, is going to be monitoring to make sure we hold to the time. But I'll do a little reading, about a third of this, and then Amy is going to ask some questions, and we'll have a little conversation, and then we'll go to your questions. And so we should try to keep it that way, and help me if I chat too much, because I've been home alone a lot lately. It's nice to see you. I thought I would read from the beginning, this might even be from the first chapter, and I think this sort of sets up what eventually happened. And it's both a cautionary tale, but also a hopeful one, I hope, for the way the world is right now. And this is, when you run for office in Haines, there are candidates forums sponsored by different groups, the radio station, the newspaper, the Chamber of Commerce, different community groups out at Mosquito Lake, say, have their own candidates forum, and then some of the special interest groups of sorts, or whatever you want to call them. But the Alaska Miners Association also has a candidates forum, and their candidates forum was at 7 in the morning in the Pioneer Bar. And this is a little bit about what happened when I went to the Alaska Miners Association. And my plan for running for office was just to be who I am and know kind of sneaky stuff, so everybody would know what they were getting. You know, when I got elected, I wasn't going to talk really politic and say things that might not could be interpreted depending on who was listening a different way. So at the Alaska Miners Association Candidate Forum at 7 o'clock on a Friday morning in the Pioneer Bar, I answered the first question about any personal connection to mines or mining we may have by divulging that my great-grandfather had been a Klondike prospector and that my grandfather was a mining engineer who graduated from the Colorado School of Mines and worked in the coal, oil, and gas country of Western Pennsylvania. There's a photo by my desk of a great-grandmother on my mother's side, seated side saddle on a burro at the Mexican silver mine where she taught school. Burro and burro, was it a sign? I told the audience that I loved songs about mining, like 16 Tons. But I didn't mention John Prine's Paradise about a Kentucky town that Mr. Peabody's coal train hauled away, and literature inspired by mining, from stories like The Luck of Roaring Camp to the writings of Jack London and Robert Service, whose classics, or at least lines from them, Alaskans are familiar with. One of my favorite novels is Wallace Stegner's Angle of Repose. The book is about love and marriage and is set in Western mining towns. The title is a metaphor, but in reading the book, I learned that practically speaking, angle of repose is the term for the steepest slope at which a hill of loose material, say mine tailings or gravel, is stable. When the phrase was mentioned in a planning commission review of a gravel pit, I had served on the planning commission for 3 years before the assembly, I knew what it was, thanks to that novel. I was so eager to please that I may have even told the miners that they could borrow my copy of the book if they wanted to read it. Some of them work in mining camps near Juneau. Others are part of the Constantine Metal Resources crew exploring the potential mine in Haines. You probably shouldn't mention literature next time, my campaign manager, Teresa, said as we debriefed over a glass of Prosecco in my kitchen. That's the least of our worries, I said, and told her what happened when the moderator asked if I supported a so-called Tier 3 clean water designation, the highest protection possible for the Chilkat River, which is right below the Constantine mine site. When the moderator said, yes or no, one word. There were 6 candidates altogether. So Diana said no, Leonard said no, Ryan said no, Judy said she wasn't sure, but when pressed, said no reluctantly. Heather? Yes. You said yes? Teresa asked. To the miners? Yes. Well, good for you, she said. Never mind that another old and dear friend, road building contractor Roger Schnabel, my daughter JJ's godfather, who I was sitting with in a booth, put his head in his hands and said, "Oh no, Heather, and I was going to vote for you." And that's funny now, but it was kind of, I went in naively and I thought that we could still all be friends if we were honest about our differences. And that, initially that's not what happened. The other thing I want to tell you about the book that are some of my very favorite parts are the manager and committee reports that are really taken from assembly packets. The way the assembly works is that we have meetings, well, pretty much once, but they're supposed to be every other week, but there's a lot more than that. But the official assembly meetings are 2 Tuesdays a month, and we get a big packet, sometimes as many as 300 pages of all the different things that we have to make some sort of a decision on or understand. And they're included in them are a lot of reports from the different committees and the manager who's hired to run the borough under our guidance. And while things were fairly turbulent in the assembly or in the community, I love these reports here because they remind us of what government does, and also that things still went on in the midst of all the emotional upheavals or pratfalls or whatever was going on in the assembly chambers. And this is one that says, Chief Scott reports that the police department is significantly over budget due to overtime costs and emergency responses. The Public Safety Commission requests that the Assembly amend the budget to fund the $63,000 shortfall. The harbor crew did an excellent job of notifying boat owners during the weekend snowstorm and shoveling off vessels as necessary. However, despite their efforts, one vessel sank. There has been a request for lighting on the sledding hill, but there are concerns that lights at night could bother nearby residents. So we are now looking into an automatic timer to turn them off at a reasonable hour. At the Chilkat Center for the Arts, the Chit Chat Cafe River Talk storytelling series winter season continues. Haines' own Geppetto's Junkyard Puppet Troupe brought Travels in the Belly to the stage for a command performance after touring Skagway and Petersburg, and the Haines Arts Council presented Women of the World in concert. Ongoing yoga, martial arts, fitness classes, and church services for St. Michael and All Angels continue. And I think this is my favorite one in the whole book. Winterfest was a great success despite the storm-related road and ferry closures and the basketball games conflict. And it's optimistic, I guess. I'm trying to think if, should I read something else, Amy, or do you want to start talking to me? What do you think?
Well, I would love to start talking to you, but you could also.
Well, then why don't you? Go ahead, because the whole point is, people can read what I write. And I spent a lot of time writing this and trying to get the words right and the stories right. And the writing is probably better than I can, talk about it. I sometimes worry that I might say the wrong thing or say it not the way that I mean it. And, that's how I figure things out, is through the writing, and I try to make it in a way that translates to other people as well too. So anyway, go ahead, ask me what you will, Miss Amy.
Well, I mean, just starting off the top, this book is quite a departure from your previous three. For those who are about to read it, can you tell us how it's different?
Yeah, I think, if I look at all my books together, they're sort of like a coming of age, in a community. And, the first book is about finding a home in Haines and really, through writing obituaries for the Chilkat Valley News and raising a family and building a house and, starting our business and all of those things, getting here and landing here and being, as the poet Emily Wall noted, freshly rooted. And then the second one was I had a terrible accident, was run over by a truck, and the community saved my life, basically, between the EMTs and my friends and family and, a physical therapist, Dr. Marnie Hartman, acupuncturist, Lori Dorian, Dr. Len Feldman. I mean, fireman Al Badgley, these people, the local clinic, I might not even be here without them. And so that was a pretty emotional book. And then the next one was kind of a shorter, small collection of things I learned writing obituaries here. But all of those three really were, I would call them love letters, essentially, to the community. And I like to think this one is too, but it's different because it was written more privately than the other ones. And it was also, shared in conversation with my friends or family or walking with Beth, as I said, but it was things that I don't usually write about politics. I write about family and life and happy things. And I didn't even think it would be that interesting, but because I process the world through writing, I just started writing about it and found places that I thought resonated, and it helped me. And it has some heartbreak in it. And there was some, part of it at one point I really felt, like it might be divorce time. But I can say, coming out on the other side. Yeah, I think so. But I have, I still have rose-colored glasses, and they might be a little cracked, and there might be some tape on them. But I think I love the community more for having been through it and come out on the other side. There's sort of a feeling of euphoria for surviving it, and also being so grateful for the people who are, doing the work that it takes to run the community, and the people who do serve on all the committees, and the people who do run for office, and my friends and neighbors. And there's so much good, and I think that's a lesson for our times a little bit. I was reading Ross Gay's Book of Delights, and he talks about finding delight, finding the things that bring him joy and focusing on delight every day. And he said he doesn't do that because there aren't things going on, that he's not always thinking about politics or racism or his mother or his garden, but because of those things, we have to try to find the moments of beauty and joy. And I think I've consciously found more to love in the community because I was in kind of a dark place in parts of this book.
What initially prompted you to want to become an Assemblywoman?
Oh, I was, so excited that that we might, we'd have our first woman president. And I was going to be part of that. And I had time, and I thought, I'd built all this goodwill, and I thought everybody knew, that I was kind of more left-leaning, and that I supported the library and, trees and fish and things. And I thought those were nice things, puppies, old people, little children. And I thought, well, this is my time, I can do this. And I have enough relationships in the town that I can bring that, and I wanted to be part of it. And, right away, it just didn't go that way. And so I ended up being part of something very different that is really kind of the feeling part that a lot of the country has felt. So I think some of the emotion in it and some of that feeling in some ways of betrayal or like, whoa, whiplash or whatever that happened even at the local level has happened to maybe a lot of us at the national level. So
I think it definitely resonates nationally, which is interesting. It makes the book even more relevant. I'm curious, this book contains some political conflicts. Are you at all concerned that there might be some local pushback or perhaps a resurgence of old feelings, or do you feel like plenty of time has passed, and is that anything you worry about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I always worry about that. That's my nature, but not as much as I used to, thanks to being in politics. I mean, I kind of toughened up some, and I got some courage through all this because, what are you going to do? And, and I also think, I think it's worth the discussion. It's worth being able to point out your perspective. And it was interesting because when I went back and I was writing it, there's a lot of emotion in different moments, and to help shape the book, I went back and I listened to recordings of old meetings, and I read the minutes, and I read the newspaper articles and listened to the radio stories, and compared it with my journaling that I would write that this was awful and these people were so harsh, and then I'd listen and I'm like, they sound very reasonable, it's just we disagree, and I thought, maybe I can write it that way. And the other thing about our community is that like the story in the beginning, I mean, we all kind of know where people are politically. We can sort of guess, and it shouldn't be a surprise, and we should be able to get along. And I think that's a lesson we can have for the country, especially now as everything is changing so rapidly. I mean, it'd be pretty terrible if we ostracized our enemies. Then how would we come back together if we said things that were sort of irreconcilable? So I don't think I say anything irreconcilable. I don't say anything that isn't, wasn't part of it. And if anything, maybe more charitable than at times I felt. So I feel kind of okay with that.
Did you feel like in your experience, those 3 years, what did you learn that helps support this kind of communication across difference and facilitates productive community building? Do you have any pointers? Because I feel like, Haines struggles with that. I think a lot of other small towns probably do. Nationally, we obviously do.
I think the big thing that I ended up falling back on is civility. It's just so easy to shout at people or roll your eyes or kick the chair, humph and puff, and that doesn't really work. It doesn't work either way. It doesn't work for public officials to demean an audience person. It doesn't, or a citizen, and it doesn't work for a citizen to, tell an assembly person they're dumb as a post. You don't tend to want to work with people that are doing that. Where I noticed that people who came to the meetings over and over again, or the most successful assembly members, were the ones who were able to just sort of say what they felt calmly, make their case, vote, go on without demonizing the person who was telling it. And that's also a good lesson in life. I mean, that's a nice way to learn how to behave. And I felt I had a really good mentor and a former mayor, Stephanie Scott. Also my friend, Tim June, who would run for office many times and had served on the Borough Assembly and very much spoke up for the things that needed speaking up for, but always in a very nice way, you know. And I didn't always. I tried to do that. I was always, sometimes I just couldn't. I'd be so afraid or backing up. But I think civility is really big. And Stephanie gave me that. I think I've got it here somewhere. Oh yeah, this is Choosing Civility by PM Forney, and I would just recommend everybody read it right now because it would really help. It would help you when you jump into Facebook discussions. It would help you everywhere. It'll help society if we all read this. And it doesn't mean that you give up and you don't fight the big fights, but you just do it nicely. Another example of that, I think, is Ernestine Hayes, who's a state writer laureate, Native woman, wrote Tao of Raven and Blonde Indian. Every time Ernestine speaks, every time she puts her hand up and she says, smash the patriarchy, right? Whether she's talking to the governor, whether she's talking to, you know, a Chamber of Commerce group or an environmental group or a women's group or a big room or a small room. And, you know, she does it so joyfully that nobody could I don't think, take offense to that. You know, it's like she just does it, and she does it in a way that while she's smiling, that, you know, it makes me happy when she does that. And it's sort of, to me, the way people can put their hands up in church. I've never been able to do that, but, you know, I wish I could, and go for it.
Some have said that your book really encourages people to engage in their local politics. I don't know that I'm all that convinced. I feel a bit apprehensive about it. What would you say to someone like me to encourage them to step in the middle of it?
You know, I would say to go to some meetings, to watch some of the assembly meetings, see what you could bring to it. Read the packet, see if there's issues there. Test your own heart rate when you walk into a room full of people and see if you could do it without, like me, like right now, turning all pink. You know, if it's, and if there's something that you're really committed to doing, you know, some way of being that you want to bring to it. I don't think you should go in with one specific, you know, agenda, but just a way of what you want to bring to something and be able to articulate that. I think it also helps if you can find a mentor, someone to help you navigate all of it, and even to have a friend to run with. If you were going to run for office, you know, like in Haines right now, there's 4 seats going to be up.
Are you going to
find a friend?
You run again?
No. No.
No?
No. And no, she read the book. No, but I think because the other thing, you know, with everything that's changed in the world right now in the last you know, month or 2 or 3, you know, it's really critically important that people serve on local assemblies, because that's where the decisions are made about law enforcement. That's where they're made about public health. That's also, unfortunately or fortunately, where all the little choices are made that can eventually lead to sort of systemic racism or injustice or inequality. You know, how much you fund a preschool program, a senior program, a lunch program. Where do you put your resources when you create a budget? And I wish I'd thought like this when I was on the assembly, and I'm really grateful for the upheaval that has sort of spun that around and made me think, oh, light on. And I think that's where, if people want to be involved in their community and involved in the world, it's really good to start right there and to take the lens of what's happening in the country and you know, really focus it in on our part of it.
We have a question from an audience member. Lisa Farber is curious about your typewriter. Can you talk about your typewriter?
This typewriter is an Olivetti Latera 32. I think it was made right around my birthday. It's sometime between, I think, 1959 and 1962. My birthday is 1959. And what happened was I got an old one of these from eBay. This was also part of when I was on the Assembly. I stayed off my computer because I didn't want to talk to everybody, which the computer's so public, you know, you end up sending things off. And so I started typing. I typed my assembly notes on it. And then I would type my journal on it, and I'd type haikus and then put them in a folder so that it was all personal and not public. And anyway, I got one of these. I got this broken one that I really liked, but it was really pretty broken. So then I ended up talking to a guy named Mr. Typewriter, and it's his name really, in Missouri. And he said he had a completely rebuilt one. And so I bought this from Mr. Typewriter. And then Mr. Typewriter also talked me into another one. There's one in the back. It's a Royal Silent Deluxe, and that's a 1941 typewriter. That's kind of a collector's item, and it's the same typewriter that Hemingway typed on. And then actually under my desk, there's 4 more. I'm just kind of collecting. And I use them when I try to, when my grandchildren come, you know, I can put them out and they can type on them. And it's cool. I find that I like to write, and my handwriting's terrible. For those of you that get signed books, you're gonna go, but yeah, and like, see, like even the notes for this, I type them up. And then I have hole punches so I can put them in my notebooks. And it's just, I don't know, it's a meditation, and it's something kind of neat. And I can't type. That's the other thing. I type with 2 fingers, so.
That's pretty old school. My favorite chapter in your book is actually Nature Remains, because I think it talks about the power of nature in Haines. To me, it's always a very easy balm. You just go outside and look at the mountains, and you know, if you are frustrated, you can just instantly be calmed. But I thought it was interesting, you talked in there in your book a little bit how it can have the negative effect too, in terms of like cabin fever in the winter, when we all get cooped up and then we're all upset with each other, probably because we haven't been talking to enough people. And then on the other hand, it you know, the trials of winter bring us together because we do come together easily to help other people. Is nature still a really important part of politics, you think, in Haines?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that much of our natural world, and there was a fellow that used to live here who was a bit of a mystic or a seer. David LaChapelle was his name, and he told me once that the reason why Haines is so polarized sometimes, or why there's so much friction, is the geography and the geology of the Chilkat River Valley, and that we have these huge glaciers that are, you know, carving out valleys and whole rivers that are coming down from them. And then we have this uplift where the ground is actually lifting, and the silt is running. And then there's major fault lines. There's earthquake, you know, the Chatham Fault runs right through. We get little earthquakes all the time. And then we've got this gravity situation where we've got more gravity than almost anywhere on Earth. Right at the corner of Mud Bay and Small Tracks, there's those black rocks go down to like the center of the Earth, and the compasses spin at the iron ore deposit at Klukwan. And it's a big crossroads, of course, from, you know, the rest of the country into the north, into the interior. So he argued that the geology and the geography here is what creates the dynamic of the people, that we're active and strong and very rooted and determined. So I think there's something to that. And then obviously there's the solace of it. I mean, I'm outside every day. I'm so spoiled now, I don't think I could live in a place that wasn't this, you know, here. I don't think I could anymore. I'm grateful every single day when I just step out in the backyard.
Yes, me too. I think it's one of the best things we have going on here.
Yeah, and I think it should, you know, but the cabin fever part, I think, is probably what is happening with the rest of the country with all the sheltering in place and everything. There may be something to what we go through every winter that is now causing kind of this explosive behavior and these issues to rise and feelings, and not to diminish them in any way, but I think we're in a little bit of, what did I read today? An anger incubator.
Oh,
Where we've been set up in essentially an anger incubator, and everybody's just, which happens here. And here, of course, always the thing that happens is summer, spring, and then everybody doesn't have time, and they're all working, and they're all outside, and oh, well, forget that, and we're all happy again. And hopefully that will happen when we get through whatever it is it'll be maybe a winter break this year, but we'll see.
I'm curious what you think since we all are kind of more at home now, and people are participating more through technology, like what we're doing right now, do you think that is potentially a very powerful medium for future politics, or?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that's the way to go now. We've seen it in the local borough assembly meetings since the pandemic, where everybody's on Zoom, and the mayor is actually in some of these town hall meetings having to call, A through D through, listing, where normally the sheet comes up and the people signed up for public comment. There might not be a name on it, or there might be one, and there might be 8 people in the audience, and they're all there maybe for one thing and that they're mad about, and then they leave. The participation level that has come because of that, I think, is a really good thing. And the other thing I think it is also doing is adding some equality to our meetings, because in Haines, I didn't think of this when I was on the assembly, and so I appreciate the what's happening in the world, because it's just like, when I was on the assembly, for instance, it was not uncommon to have people on the phone commenting, but they would be all the out-of-town bigwigs, basically, the people who were involved in a timber sale or a mine, or someone's attorneys, or a big contractor, or a union representative, or whatever. And because of Haines' location, they couldn't physically get to our meetings, or they could, but it might take them a couple of days to fly and then take a ferry. And in the winter, you can't come and go. And so they would get to listen in on the phone and to comment, where a local resident who was stuck at 10 miles out of town in the snow with the child at home on a Tuesday night at 6:30, and there was no way they could go to the meeting. They weren't allowed to call in. You had to come to testify. And so I realized, like, the powerful people have been doing this all along, and now everybody can. Right. And I remember asking, why can't more people call in? Oh, no, then that would be terrible. They have to come. I'm like, well, why not? I mean, we'd have more people participating. And then we even had this is kind of wonky, I don't mean to do, but it's just how you can see things differently, even when you're in the system and you don't realize it at the time, but there's something off, but now you can see what it was. And I hope that meetings are more opened up. And we had one of our assembly members really wanted to do this program called opengov.com, which was like that. It was an interactive social media type of thing. And because of what was happening in Haines, I was like really sure that that was a terrible idea, that it was going to be like the comments in the newspaper on Facebook, and everybody just calling each other names and, stacking the comments with their things. And I was like, no. And it turns out, if it's like Zoom, it would be great. And I'm counting on the next generation to get in there and change that stuff and make sure that can happen and more people can participate that way. Heck, even be on the assembly like we are. Maybe you don't have to go to a physical meeting if it's too difficult for you and your family.
We had someone just comment that they loved Zoom because they get to see everybody's bookshelves.
I like the hair, really.
I like that comment. That's great. Did you have another reading that you wanted to do, Heather?
Yeah, I can do a little one. I wanted to do, I think, here's just a little interesting one that had to do with a short one. I'll do two little short ones, I guess. There's one along the lines of civility that we talked about. That
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what's going on?
Are you going to sing Happy Birthday?
Careful.
Are you going to sing? Oh my gosh, who made this? Who did this? This is my husband, for those of you who see. Oh,
Happy
thank you.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Where did this come from?
It's for you.
Happy birthday.
Well, I'm going to blow out the candles. Who made this cake? Do you know?
Your
Yep. All right, I'll blow out the candles. Wow, that's a big surprise.
Happy birthday.
Where are you gonna put it?
Happy birthday, Heather.
Thank you.
Birthday.
That is great.
There you go.
Wait, let me show you. I gotta show
birthday.
you my birthday present. I just thought, I didn't realize that was going to happen. I was like, how are they going to do the cake thing? And Chip didn't say anything. He was very secretive. And I was like, oh, hi, children. Look at my beautiful grandchildren. Yeah, this was my birthday present. It's a chainsaw.
A chainsaw.
What every Alaskan girl needs. Yeah, it's a chainsaw. It's a battery operated chainsaw. And I actually borrowed one from my friend Beth, and I've been trimming with it. Sport logging, I call it. And I got one for my birthday. So watch out.
Right.
I'm going to become a developer now and start clear cutting my yard. No, I won't. But anyway.
They're singing to you. Do you hear them singing to you, Heather?
So.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear me. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mimi. We love you.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yeah, they that was little Teddy is the littlest one, and Lonnie and Sylvia Rose and Ivy and Caroline. And then there's the other ones in Juneau are baby Amelia and Molly and James. And then in Australia, there's Lila and Matea and Luca. So it's a lot going on. Well, thank you. That was a nice surprise. What kind of cake is it?
I don't know. You have to tell us.
I'm gonna. Oh, this is also. I got these flowers. I told you that from Becky, didn't I? Today, Becky Nash. I might not have told her, but my friend Becky came by and she brought pretty flowers and had picked them for me, and so I thought I'd put them there too. So it was nice.
That's great. Happy birthday. Thanks for showing off your chainsaw.
Yeah, I just thought that I would show it to you. I can't wait to try it out.
Well, I was curious if you wanted to do another reading.
Oh yes. Do you really want me to?
I do.
Okay. I'll do a little one about. I gotta find it. I put little notes in here so I'd remember this time, and I'm a little nervous about doing this. So hopefully, but I did want to talk. One of the things when I was talking about civility, there was a little section that I mentioned my friend Stephanie, and when I was feeling, trying to figure out, especially the tension, for some reason in public meetings, and I don't know if you feel it, but I did, even sitting up there on the dais, they call it, and looking out, even in a place like Haines, your heart beats fast, and all of a sudden you're like, ooh, and you're in the swivel chair, and there's microphones, and the water, and the packet, and then the people in the audience, they've got to go up and go to a microphone and say their name, even though we all know their name, right? And there's like a tension for some reason, even just to speak, people get nervous, their hands are going like this and the thing, and I thought, what? How can we make this more comfortable? So I asked Stephanie, and she said, pretend you're in your house and you are the host. When she was mayor, she said she imagined the assembly chambers as her living room and everyone in it as her guests. And when she gave me Choosing Civility, it was already battered and full of starred pages and margin notes. And she had underlined phrases like, civility belongs in the realm of ethics. And being civil requires constantly being aware of others and seeking ways to be respectful and considerate. I'm a little too constantly aware of others, but perhaps that can be a good thing. And then she talks, then I skip over a little bit, but I said, part of the problem with the Haines Assembly Chambers and visualizing that as my living room could be physical. The Assembly Chambers is about as charming as the waiting room of a juvenile detention facility. The fluorescent lighting makes everyone look ill. The poor ventilation will probably make us sick. This will never happen anymore, thanks to that phlegmy rattle of a cougher who sometimes sits in the back row, or the standing water in the crawl space beneath us. Fresh paint would help, as would local artwork. The ceiling is too low. Spending tax dollars on interior decorating would cause Big Don, my nemesis, even more heartburn than when I added those landscaping funds to beautify that big new harbor parking lot. He's still steaming about my shrubberies, and they haven't even been planted yet. Of course, there are other ways to make people comfortable in a sitting room than to remodel. Heat, courteous hosts, gin. Anyway, I like that one. But I suppose on a more serious note, that I think I'll end. I'll mention this because I think this is probably one of the a good thing to share, and that it's important to me. And this happened at the end of a really long meeting. Well, I wrote this after writing about the end of a very long meeting that where we had to craft a compromise about a gravel pit and a friend's trucks coming through a neighborhood, and how to do that to allow the trucks to come through, but also to keep some peace in the neighborhood. And these can become big conflicts. And it was an appeal that the Planning Commission had approved it, and then it came to the Assembly, and it ended up being the longest meeting in Haynesboro history to date. It basically lasted over, I think it was 4 days and a couple nights, and there was a little gap in there when the mayor was traveling and another assembly member was traveling, and we picked it up again the next day. But it was a lot. And we really had to work together and try to come to some resolution. And we had, and everybody was really happy. And not 100% happy, because that's how compromises work. I don't think the contractor was particularly pleased. The neighborhood wasn't particularly pleased, but everybody was like, we could live with this. And they were all talking to each other. And the assembly was pleased, and the staff was pleased that we had actually voted unanimously on it and really worked something out. Anyway, then at the end of that, what happened was, and I can see my grandchildren, was that one of the people involved, I said, well, hey, this seems like it worked out okay. And he said, no. He said he was very disappointed, and he was most particularly disappointed in me. And he said he wouldn't want to be me when, one of those trucks ran into one of my grandchildren. And just thinking about that now, it kind of takes my breath away, and my children and the contractor's also a friend. And I just was like, how could somebody say that? And I left. That was really a low point. But then in the writing and in the thinking about it and how I came to where I am now, is that, and this is part, I think this is really important. It said, the story of how we shape our common existence, the rules that guide us, and the representatives who create them and to some extent ensure we abide by them, has some dazzling chapters, and they often contain pleasant surprises. But there are a lot of heartbreaking plot twists along the way. Please don't take this the wrong way. I believe that if we citizens and we voters and we elected officials acknowledge this truth, our democracy will be healthier. I hate to sound like a grandmother, but I am one. And so, my dears, learn to share, take turns, and understand not everyone can have everything she wants all the time. And finally, and this may be the most important thing I will ever say about politics and life, accept apologies that won't be offered and forgive people who may never ask you to. And I think that's, how I've kind of gotten to where I am. That's what you have to do. And I think you also, if you're going to go into politics, you have to understand that when you care deeply about things, you're going to lose sometimes. But you just have to keep going back and keep trying and try to do it in as kind a way as possible.
Are you still keeping a close eye on the local politics, or have you kind of taken a step back and a breather?
I wasn't paying attention. I actually thought everything was going great. Some of you might have read, I wrote a little piece in the New York Times about how good Haines was doing, that I even missed being in the assembly meetings. And I kind of wished I was on there now because of the pandemic and how well we were doing. And then when I wasn't paying attention, the whole thing imploded again. And it's almost like the sequel was written. Some of the same people who were involved in my book fired the manager that we hired all of a sudden in the middle of all this. And it was like, whoa. And then I started going to meetings again and on Zoom, listening and sending them emails and writing in letters and calling in comments. And so I have been a little more active again lately. And I found it's kind of nice to be able to pay attention and to address them in ways that I think maybe they might listen, and to explain things nicely and to try to practice some of the things that I preach that I might not have done so well when I was sitting there. And there's a real power in citizens who are engaged. The people who show up are the ones who have a greater influence on the decision makers. And if you can show up with letters and phone calls and other ways when you feel important, it made me feel good to be able to speak up about some of the things. The budget, for instance, funding for the library, the art center, I spoke up about that. I also have become more involved. I was really disappointed that the University of Alaska chose to really gut so many programs that are dear to me, particularly creative writing, drama. It was just a shock, because I think that, discussions, books, laws even can maybe change people's minds, but it's stories, that change people's hearts. And to eliminate that, that opportunity for a lot of Alaskans who, face it, going out of state is a long way for us. And look at the way the world is now. We might not be. And now there aren't resources there to help all the people who have great stories to tell them. And that makes me really, really sad. And I spoke to the regents and I wrote them a letter, but didn't work. But I felt better for at least doing it. And I think that's the other important thing too. You can't just fret about the news all the time. At least write a letter, make a phone call, send an email. I mean, they get enough of them, they start to listen, I think.
Hopefully. Hopefully. Well, thank you, Heather, for sharing your stories and sharing your stories about Haines that resonate with so many people in small towns and across the United States. We're about out of time. Happy birthday, Heather. Thank you for sharing your birthday with us. And
thank everybody for coming. It's really great. It makes me happy. I wish we could all be in the same room, and I'm looking forward to when we can. I was walking with my friend Beth today, and she said that there's people looking. She has a retreat and a little venue for things like weddings and stuff. And she said there were people looking for weddings for next summer there. And I thought, gosh, the years go so fast. Maybe by next summer we'll all be able to be at a party, and how much more we're going to appreciate that than we had before. So here's hoping.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and also I want to let anybody know that I'm really easy to get a hold of. Obviously if you're here, you probably know that, but you can reach me through the website, and I'll answer emails. If there are questions that you didn't get to, I'll do my best to get back to you. And I really, really appreciate you reading what I write and sharing it with your friends.
Thank you everyone for attending. You can reach out to Heather if we didn't get to your question on her blog. Also, she has a link to her current very busy schedule of events that you guys can attend virtually. A lot of them are recorded so you can see them later. She's been very busy. And I wanted to give a very personal, special thank you to everyone who pre-ordered the book. It's been really wonderful to chat with folks from all over the country who share their love of Heather's writing and of this small town Haines. Your support keeps us all going and it means so much. So thank you very much. Thank you for attending and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It's really great to see you. I'm going to go have some birthday cake now with my grandchild. I probably should eat something healthy first, or maybe not. I might just have a piece of cake and just keep eating cake.
Careful with that chainsaw, Heather.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much for coming. And it's really nice to have you here. And I appreciate it. And thank you to all the people that made this possible, and Amy and Carol Tyman, especially with the Haines Art Market Alaska. I believe it's Fine Art Alaska, her endeavor. And thanks for old friends like Andrea, who came from Friends Academy, and Dylan Chapel, and you can see the folks on the screen too, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Enjoy the book. Let me know.
Happy